I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how long I'd been out. All I knew was that this wasn't my bedroom, and my body felt like it had been pulled out of a wreck. A nurse noticed my eyelids fluttering and rushed over. "Mr. Hale? Can you hear me?" I tried to speak, but my throat felt scraped raw. She gave me a small sip of water. "You're at Grady Memorial. You were brought in after a major highway collision. You're lucky to be alive." Lucky. That word hung in the air like an inside joke the universe wasn't ready to explain yet. Before I could process anything else, I heard the click of heels. Sharp, confident, familiar. My wife, Tara, stepped into the room. Her expression didn't match the situation. No panic, no relief, not even surprise that her husband, who had nearly died, was awake. She looked composed, polished, almost rehearsed. "Marcus," she said flatly, walking to the side of my bed. "Good. You're finally conscious." Finally? How long had I been under? She didn't touch me, didn't ask how I felt, didn't even check the machines I was hooked to. Instead, she reached into her designer tote and pulled out a thick envelope. She set it on the tray table with the same care someone might use for a fresh manicure. "I need you to sign these," she said. "It's best if we do this now." My heart thudded once, slow, uneven. I forced my hand toward the envelope, fingers trembling, and slid out the stack of documents. Divorce petition, emergency motion for asset control, statements claiming I was medically impaired and unable to manage financial responsibilities. My breath hitched. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't a reaction to my accident. She had prepared this, planned it, timed it. Tara leaned in, her voice calm and practiced. "I know this is a lot, but it's the right step for both of us. The judge will move faster if you're cooperative." I looked at her, really looked, and something inside me went cold, because she thought this accident had made me vulnerable. She thought I was blind, weak, defenseless. But what Tara didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that I had already prepared for this exact moment. Long before the crash, long before today, I was already 10 moves ahead. I met Tara 12 years ago at a corporate logistics conference in Charlotte. Back then, she was bright, charming, and sharp enough to finish my sentences during a panel discussion. I fell hard and fast, convinced I'd finally found someone who understood the pace of my life. The long hours, the spreadsheets, the pressure of keeping complex systems from falling apart. For the first few years, we were a solid team. We traveled, we laughed. We built a home in Atlanta filled with warm colors and carefully chosen furniture. She pushed me to climb the ladder at work, and I pushed her to open her own consulting business. It felt like we were building the same life, the same dream, but somewhere around year 7, things shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was subtle, the way rust forms, slow and quiet until the whole structure weakens. She started working later. Then she stopped sharing details about her projects. Then she started leaving her phone face down on the table. Normal couples might argue about that. But Tara and I didn't argue. She'd just smile and say I was overthinking, and I'd drop it. I didn't want to seem paranoid. I was a logistics director. My whole job revolved around anticipating problems before they happened. But I didn't want to run my marriage like a risk assessment. But then there were the expenses. And then there were the charity donations. Small transfers, $150 here, $200 there, to an organization I'd never heard of. I looked it up one night. No website, no address, just a vague mission statement and a disconnected phone line. That was the first time I wondered if she was funneling money somewhere, or to someone. But when I asked, she laughed, kissed my cheek, and said, "Marcus, you worry too much." That was the night I stopped believing her smiles. A pair of designer shoes she got on sale. A flight to Miami she claimed was an emergency client visit. A hotel charge that didn't match the city she said she was in. Once, her charity donation matched the exact amount of a hotel bill in Miami. Another time, a coworker casually mentioned Tara hadn't been at the conference she claimed she traveled for. Or the night she claimed her phone died, but her GPS history recorded a 2-hour detour she never mentioned. Small things that didn't connect at first. But patterns always reveal themselves eventually. I remember the night everything crystallized. She had left her tablet on the couch while she went upstairs to shower. A notification flashed across the screen. Not a message, just a banking alert. A transfer. A name I didn't recognize. A hidden card I'd never seen. It was the first time I felt something inside me truly break. Not from anger. From clarity. That night, I sat in my home office long after she'd fallen asleep. I opened my laptop, pulled out old financial files, and began comparing every detail from the last 5 years. Transactions, statements, timestamps. I didn't confront her. I didn't storm into the bedroom demanding answers. I didn't want to fight. I wanted the truth. And the truth demanded preparation. So I began doing what I knew best, building a system. I created digital logs of every shared account. I pulled old emails she didn't know were archived. I mirrored our joint bank activity in real time. I set up private consultations with an attorney who specialized in asset protection. And I listened, really listened, to the excuses, to the inconsistencies, to the tone of her apologies when I caught her in a lie. I learned that betrayal rarely arrives in a single moment. It arrives piece by piece, disguised as normal life. 3 years before my accident, I restructured every asset I personally owned, premarital accounts, investments, retirement, and trust funds from my parents. I placed them behind legal walls Tara didn't even know existed. She believed everything was joint. It wasn't. Not anymore. I also added clauses, fail-safes that activated under specific conditions. If someone attempted to seize funds without my consent. If any medical claim questioned my mental capacity. If a divorce petition was filed without prior mediation. Contingency plans. Triggers. Documented truth. Because by then, I knew something Tara didn't. She saw marriage as leverage. As access. As a strategic position. And I realized that if she ever tried to leave me, she would do it the way she handled everything. Cleanly, quickly, with precision. So I prepared for precision with precision. Still, nothing prepared me for how coldly she delivered those papers in the hospital. But the moment I saw the date on those documents, the signatures made while I was unconscious, I understood. She hadn't changed overnight. She had simply decided the time had come. And unfortunately for her, so had I. Tara came back the next morning wearing the same expression she wore to client meetings. Poised, controlled, confident. Not a hint of worry that her husband had nearly died. Not a tremble in her voice. Not even a forced smile. She closed the blinds as if she owned the room, then pulled a chair to the side of my bed and crossed her legs. "We need to talk about next steps," she said. Next steps. As if I were a postponed appointment. My throat still burned from the breathing tube. I managed to croak. "Next? What steps?" She sighed like I was inconveniencing her. "Marcus, the accident changed everything. You were unconscious for nearly 36 hours. The doctors weren't sure if you'd wake up today. And frankly, I can't be tied to this anymore." I stared at her. My chest tightened. Not from the injuries, but from the realization that this wasn't temporary panic. This was rehearsed. She'd planned these lines the same way she planned social events. Down to the tone, down to the pauses. I whispered, "You already filed." She didn't deny it. She didn't flinch. She simply tilted her head slightly, like a business mentor giving constructive feedback. "Yes," she said. "Yesterday afternoon. Couldn't wait. There were too many uncertainties. And the attorney said the court moves faster when there's a medical issue involved." Medical issue. She meant me. "What are you trying to take?" I asked slowly, though I already knew. She met my eyes with a calm I'll never forget. "Just what's fair. The house. The joint accounts. The investments. And I already moved half the liquid assets for safety. In case things drag out." A flicker of pride crossed her face. Pride, not guilt. The woman actually believed she'd outsmarted me. She leaned in. "I know this is a bad time, but honestly, there's never a good time for divorce. And the attorney recommended filing while, well." She glanced at my fore, then at my leg cast. "While things are clear." My mind replayed her words like an echo chamber. While things are clear, what she meant was, while you're too weak to fight me. She continued talking, unaware that each sentence only sharpened the clarity of who she truly was. The forms I brought you are just acknowledgments, she said, tapping the envelope with her manicured nail. Your signature helps the court process everything faster. We can avoid months of hearings. I stared at her hands. Steady, polished, efficient. Those hands had once held mine during thunderstorms. Those same hands were now here to empty my life into hers. She kept talking, her voice drifting in and out as my mind pieced together all the things I had quietly documented over the years. But then she said something that snapped everything into perfect focus. You weren't waking up, she said softly, almost irritated. The doctors told me to prepare for the worst. I stayed here as long as I could, but I had meetings, responsibilities. You know how it is. Yes, I knew exactly how it was. Tara didn't miss meetings. Tara didn't miss opportunities. And she certainly didn't miss chances to get ahead. Emotionally, socially, financially. So I did what I had to do, she said. If you hadn't woken up today, the paperwork would have given me access to everything we built. Everything we built. The words tasted bitter, because I suddenly understood the truth I had been avoiding for years. We hadn't built anything together. I had built stability, trust, security. She had built strategies. She kept explaining the logistics of how she had already contacted real estate agents to assess the value of our home. She talked about transferring our SUV into her name, temporarily. She casually mentioned how she had already filed a claim suggesting I might not be mentally fit to handle finances, based solely on the assumption that I might not wake up. She hadn't even waited 24 hours. My chest tightened as she listed everything she'd already rearranged without my knowledge. But strangely, I didn't break. I didn't scream, because everything she was saying proved she had fallen straight into every trap I'd prepared. She had moved money, but not the real money. She had tried to gain control of assets, but not the ones she legally had access to. She had filed petitions claiming I was incompetent, not knowing I had pre-established medical evaluations on file. Everything she thought she now owned was just smoke and mirrors, paper fronts, decoys, accounts designed to detect unauthorized access. The pity I felt wasn't for myself. It was for her, for how confidently she believed she had already won. She sat back in her chair, smoothing the hem of her blazer. When you recover a little more, she added, we can talk about spousal support. Or maybe we won't need to if you sign today. Spousal support. From me, to the woman who timed my near-death experience like a bonus round. At that moment, the nurse came in to check my vitals, and Tara stood to leave. She pressed a cool hand to the metal railing of my bed, not to comfort me, but to steady herself as she gathered her purse. We'll talk more tomorrow, she said, already halfway out the door. I expect you'll be reasonable about this. When the door closed behind her, the room felt colder. But under that cold, beneath the pain in my ribs and the stiffness in my throat, something else stirred. Not anger, not panic, a quiet, controlled certainty. Because Tara thought today was the day she blindsided me. But long before she ever imagined betraying me, long before this accident, I had prepared for the moment she revealed who she truly was. Her betrayal wasn't the beginning of my downfall. It was the trigger that set my entire plan in motion. If you love stories of betrayal, hidden truths, and justice that strikes when no one expects it, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. New stories drop every day, each one darker, sharper, and more unforgettable than the last. Now back to the story. That night, long after visiting hours ended, the hospital room settled into a heavy silence. I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles, their rigid grid almost comforting. Order, structure, patterns, the very things that had always kept my world steady. My body hurt everywhere, ribs, leg, neck, but my mind? My mind was sharper than it had been in years. Tara thought she had delivered a finishing blow today. But all she had done was confirm exactly what I had prepared for. Around 11 p.m., a young nurse named Alexis came in to adjust my "Do you need anything else before I go?" she asked. I nodded weakly. "Just the small black case on the chair." She handed it to me without question. Paramedics had grabbed it from my car, assuming it contained work materials. In a way, it did, but not the kind anyone expected. Inside was my emergency kit, something most people would laugh at if I admitted I kept it on me at all times. But logistics teaches you one rule above all else. Everything fails eventually. Only preparation saves you. I opened the case with trembling fingers. The first layer held everyday items, chargers, cables, my spare phone. But beneath that, under a false bottom, was the real heart of the kit. A 4 terabytes encrypted drive. Hard copies of asset logs. A laminated card with legal instructions. A sealed envelope from my attorney labeled, "Open only if she moves first." She had moved first. My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. Inside were 2 letters. The first was a single sentence, written in my attorney's neat handwriting. "If you are reading this, then everything is already set in motion." The second letter contained step-by-step instructions. Nothing emotional, nothing flowery, just precise directives written by a man who knew exactly how I thought. I pressed the call button for the nurse. When she returned, I whispered, "Can you help me make a phone call?" "Not the hospital phone, the one in my case." She hesitated, then nodded. "Just keep it short." I dialed the number from memory. It rang once. Mr. Hale. Harris Caldwell, my attorney, sounded fully awake despite the late hour. He always sounded awake. "It's time," I whispered. A soft breath. Not surprise, confirmation. "We activated protocols this morning," he said. The moment the divorce petition timestamp hit the system, I closed my eyes. Of course he had, because 3 years ago, I had asked him a simple question. What if she tries to take everything while I'm compromised? He'd looked at me for a long moment and said, "Then we prepare for that scenario." And we did. Over the next 20 minutes, Harris laid out everything that had already happened while Tara thought she was winning. All my premarital accounts were locked behind 180-day protective clauses. The joint accounts she accessed were decoy funnels I created specifically to detect unauthorized movement. The real investments, my real savings, were already transferred into time-stamped protected trusts she couldn't touch. The house title she thought was joint had been legally reclassified after a refinancing she never read through. And her attempt to claim I was mentally impaired triggered an automatic request for an independent capacity evaluation, already scheduled. "It's airtight, Marcus," Harris said. She acted too fast, too sloppy. I almost laughed, not out of joy, but out of disbelief at how predictable she had been. All her precision, all her careful secrecy, undone by her own impatience. "Harris," I said quietly, "what's next?" "Rest. Recover. We have a financial investigator reviewing her withdrawals. By tomorrow afternoon, her emergency motions will crumble." I felt a warmth in my chest. Not comfort, not relief, but something deeper. Control. For the first time since the crash, I felt fully in control. After the call, I stared at the window. Atlanta's skyline glittered faintly in the distance, blurred by the fog and my painkillers. I remembered all the times Tara had belittled my habit of over-preparing. "You act like the world is always out to get you," she'd say with a laugh. But the world hadn't been out to get me. She had. And now that she'd shown her hand, my entire system, years of quiet planning, was already locking her out. Around midnight, I opened the encrypted drive. Each folder was exactly where I left it. Financial recordings, hidden transactions, emails she forgot to delete, timeline of inconsistencies, each piece carefully collected, not out of spite but out of necessity. I felt a strange stillness settle over me. Not rage, not heartbreak, clarity, because for the first time in years the path was straight, logical, clean. She had betrayed me completely, and now, finally, I was free to act without doubt, without hesitation, without guilt. The turning point wasn't the accident. It wasn't the divorce papers. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was this moment, alone in a dim hospital room, surrounded by machines keeping my battered body alive. The moment I realized I wasn't fighting to save my marriage anymore. I was fighting to save myself. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the hospital room felt less like a place of recovery and more like a war bunker. My body still ached, but my mind was sharper than it had been in months. Every beep of the monitor felt like a countdown to the moment everything would shift. And shift it did. Around noon, Harris, the attorney who'd helped me build the silent fortress around my assets, walked in wearing a charcoal suit and an expression carved from calm, unshakable confidence. He nodded once, acknowledging the severity without dramatics. "She's coming," he said. "With company." My pulse quickened, but not with fear. With readiness. At 12:17 p.m., the door swung open. Tara entered first, crisp white blazer, sleek ponytail, a binder in hand. Behind her were two people. Her divorce attorney, Michael Grant, a man with a reputation for aggressive tactics, and a paralegal rolling a cart containing God knows how many documents they believed would steamroll me. Tara stopped when she saw that I wasn't alone. Her eyes narrowed. "Why is he here?" I rested my head back against the pillow. "You wanted to talk, didn't you?" "I thought I should have someone with me." Michael scoffed. "Mr. Hale, we're simply here to finalize signatures for the petition. My client has been more than patient given your condition." "Patient?" Harris echoed dryly. "He woke up from a near-fatal accident yesterday." Michael's jaw twitched. Tara stepped forward. "Marcus, please. Let's not drag this out. The longer you wait, the harder this becomes for both of us. Both of us, right?" She reached into her binder and pulled out the documents. Clean, perfectly tabbed, ready for signatures. She laid them on the tray table and pushed a pen toward me. "Just sign. It's best if we complete the transfers and filings before the weekend." She said it like a closing sales pitch. Efficient, controlled, confident. Harris didn't look at the documents. He didn't even glance at the pen. Instead, he opened his briefcase, retrieved a single folder, and placed it gently on top of her stack. "Before my client signs anything," he said, "we need to discuss your filings from yesterday." Michael frowned. "What filings?" "The emergency motion claiming medical incapacity," Harris replied, "along with the attempted transfer of funds from accounts you believed were joint." A visible twitch ran across Tara's left cheek. "They were joint." "No," Harris corrected. "They were not." He pulled out a document stamped and signed by a judge earlier that morning. An injunction. "As of 9:14 a.m. today, every account Mrs. Hale accessed has been frozen for suspicion of financial misconduct." The room stilled. Even the heart monitor seemed to hold its breath. Michael lunged toward the paper. "This is absurd." "On what grounds?" Harris raised an eyebrow. "On the grounds that your client attempted to seize assets that do not legally belong to her. And on the grounds that she filed medical claims before any evaluation was conducted." Tara's eyes widened. "He was unconscious," the doctor said. "Your petition is time-stamped," Harris said firmly. "It predates the medical evaluation request by 5 hours. Which means you filed before any doctor declared him impaired." A flush crept up her neck. I watched her unravel. Not with explosive panic, but with the kind of slow, dawning horror that comes from realizing every door she thought was open had been false. "Additionally," Harris continued, sliding another document forward, "the house you intended to list for sale? Solely in my client's name. The refinancing documents were notarized 2 years ago. You signed them without reading. And one more thing," Harris said, pulling out a pale blue form. "Your client filed a preliminary request last week to transfer the house title solely into her name. She claimed my client verbally agreed, but never signed because he was too busy with work. The court flagged it as suspicious, but now it's evidence." Tara froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She hadn't just planned to leave me. She'd planned to erase me. What? That's impossible." "You thought it was a standard renewal for better mortgage rates," I said quietly. "You were rushing to leave for a girl's trip. You signed without asking questions. Her breath hitched. Harris wasn't finished. And regarding the joint investment accounts, he said, pulling out another sheet. Your client transferred money out of a decoy portfolio designed to track unauthorized access. Those transfers recorded your login credentials, location data, and timestamps, which triggered an audit. Michael's face drained of color. A decoy? I nodded slowly. Built 3 years ago. Tara stared at me like she was seeing a stranger for the first time. You set me up. No, I replied. I protected myself. Her voice trembled for the first time. Marcus, I didn't know you felt that you might betray me? Finished. I didn't want to feel that, but you gave me enough signs. Harris leaned back, letting the silence settle before delivering the final blow. The court reviewed everything this morning. Your emergency petitions are dismissed. Your request for temporary asset control is denied. And due to evidence of bad faith financial manipulation, Marcus is being granted exclusive use of the marital home during proceedings. Tara staggered slightly, gripping the back of the chair as if the floor had shifted beneath her. Michael tried to regain control. This is premature. We haven't. It's done, Harris said. The judge signed the orders an hour ago. A soft, almost broken sound escaped Tara's throat. I had heard that sound only once before, when her father died. Back then, it had been grief. Today, it was the collapse of a strategy. She turned to me, eyes desperate. You can't do this, she whispered. It's cruel. Cruel was discovering she had already contacted a realtor before I even woke up. I swallowed hard. Cruel was filing divorce papers while I was unconscious. Cruel was trying to take everything I built. Cruel was assuming I'd be too broken to fight. Her chin quivered. I was scared. No, I said gently. You were confident. You only became scared when you realized I wasn't helpless. For a moment, the room was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of machines. Finally, Harris stood and closed his folder. Unless there's further business, we're done here. Michael muttered something under his breath and stormed out. Tara didn't move. She just stared at me as if trying to reconstruct a version of me she could still control. But that man was gone. She finally straightened, wiped her eyes, and whispered, "This isn't over." I met her gaze with a steady calm. It already is. She walked out with shaking hands, her heels clicking too fast, too loud. A retreat disguised as dignity. When the door closed, the tension seeped out of my body all at once. My heart monitor beeped wildly for a moment until it steadied. Harris placed a hand on the bed railing. You did well. I nodded slowly. It's not victory. Not yet. But it's justice. No, he said. If stories of betrayal and hidden truths keep you thinking long after they end. Click the story showing on your screen now.